joining us. Doug and I, we're going to be talking about a ton of stuff tonight. Make sure, though, to start getting your comments in. We're going to be answering everything tonight. So without further ado, here's Rich.
What's up, guys?
Rick, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
We're hanging in there, man. How's looks like you had a pretty darn good weekend of fishing, looking at your social media channels.
Yeah, it was good. We went out there and didn't take long. We got right on top of the salmon bite, and it was insane for a few hours. Just salmon after salmon hitting the deck of the boat.
So is this a little early? I mean, typically than most years, are we kind of on schedule here?
I think this is not typical. For years, the bite really just started in the Western Basin, and it slowly worked its way east throughout the spring and early summer. The last 3 or 4 years, it's been a salmon bite all up and down the South Shore. And I gotta be honest, I don't know why, but the salmon seem more spread out, and so everyone's catching them, which is a great thing for the lake. Because I mean, that's why people come here. And so yeah, I don't think it's typical. It's not how it has been in the past, but I'll take it.
Nice. Now, what size salmon were you guys catching? I mean, they seem a little bigger? They look healthy?
We got one that was like a jack, but for the most part, they were 10 to 16, 17 pounds, maybe a little bigger. I'm horrible at judging fish.
Come on, you've seen enough of them.
I've seen enough of them, but just think back to the last spring king of the lake, where I was like, oh, we don't have anything, and we ended up with the box we had. When fish hit the deck of my boat, they don't look big to me. I don't know why.
Probably doesn't have nothing to do with that giant deck that you have or nothing.
Or just the guys that fish with me were all pretty big guys.
You do have like the whole offensive line. I can't really talk much because I'd probably fit out on your team pretty well. But you guys got the whole defense or offensive lineman for the Bills up there.
I think you're stealing that from Pete.
That is true. I did see that. That was pretty good.
Those top 10 were nice, though. I mean, that dock, walking down that dock is treacherous.
Oh man, you aren't kidding. Every time I'm walking down it, I feel like I'm going in.
Yeah,
no doubt. So how's the brown trout fishing been? I know it seems like it's been pretty good. Let's give us a little bit of a report on what you got going on there.
Yeah, so I like to get out and brown trout fish as soon as I can. I've got the boat to get me out there early in the spring, and it's been phenomenal. As many browns as you want, especially when the water's right. And with the spring we've had, it's weather pattern after weather pattern after weather pattern. So it's very this spring especially, it's been uncommon to have clear water. So when you're brown trout fishing in the spring, if you've got that colored up water, it's game on. And it's been game on from Niagara River all the way up to Henderson Harbor with these guys catching brown trout. So it's been great.
So just to remind everybody, let's make sure we get our comments in here for Rick. Ask as many questions as you'd like. This is all about you guys and what you guys want to know. Rick's a very diverse fisherman, fishing all over Lake Ontario. So please, any questions regarding salmon, coho, lake trout, whatever, let's get them going. I see we've got some of his buddies look like there must be joining in here. So
I've got great friends.
The hecklers going in.
Questions rolling in.
No, this is good. This is good. So, Rick, you grew up fishing Lake Ontario, correct? Tell us a little bit about your background and kind of the history. I know you fished a lot with your brother and your family, which I'm sure is very important to you. And now that you got a newborn, I'm sure you're looking forward to raising him on Lake Ontario as well.
Oh, I can't wait to get him out there. But I grew up fishing Lake Ontario. I think my father said we were in that 5 to 6 year range when he brought us on the boat. And I'm sure I was a giant pain in the butt at that age. And I'm sure I cried a lot. And, but he took us every weekend, no matter who he was going with, whatever buddies he had, he took us out there. So, my childhood memories are showing up to my grandma's house where the boat was kept. And she's got 2 bags full of candy and food and drinks, and off fishing we go. So I spent a lot of time on Lake Ontario over the years.
That's awesome. And you fish a lot with your brother as well, correct? Talk about that and kind of your guys' relationship and how that dynamic works. Because I'm sure there's some interesting moments as brothers. And but talk a little bit about that and how that relationship works with you guys.
So growing up, I always had the port side of the boat. He always had the starboard side of the boat. And to this day, when we set up, he's got the starboard and I have the port. And I'll take the center rigger and get that down first thing in the morning. But yeah, we have our own side of the boat. We have our own programs. He likes to experiment with stuff, and I like to stick with the stuff that I have, the most confidence in. But he's always throwing stuff down, and I'm just shake my head sometimes, but he catches fish too. So, but yeah, growing up, that's how we always split the boat, and even to this day.
Now, do you guys kind of have your own? Is he kind of drive the boat? How you run the back of the boat? How does that work kind of on your boat?
So in the morning, we'll both set rods, but he's pretty much the driver. And even during tournaments, he's a driver. He's a great driver. He keeps us on the fish, even when, from the back of the boat, you're not watching the GPS. So you think he's going somewhere else, but you look back and he's keeping you right on those waypoints. He enjoys driving. If I had to drive, I'd probably fall asleep at the wheel. It just doesn't do it for me. So, it's a joke with some of the guys that fish around us. And, when they come by us trolling, I'm standing in the middle of the back of my boat, staring at my fish finder and watching the gear, where he's usually up on his cell phone or driving and messing with the customers.
Right on. So, yeah, I mean, I think, Rick, one thing that's very apparent is your tournament history. I mean, you guys, your boat, your team you have a very impressive resume, to say the least. Talk about, I'm a big believer in chemistry in terms of your team and your charter, whether you're just a charter fisherman, whether you're a tournament angler. Talk about the chemistry, and you like to fish with the same guys, it seems like, very regularly. Talk about that a little bit in terms of how do you take, approach your tournaments, and you have certain guys that do this. How does that work for you?
So when it comes to tournament fishing, yes, we do have the same teams that fish every tournament, and I'm very fortunate to have that because it's very difficult to find teammates that can fish these with you and that can afford to fish these with you. And we all get along great. I mean, I've had tournaments where we had 4 captains on board at once, and we all got along great. But just I've seen a lot of teams come and go, and most of the time it's because they take tournament fishing too serious. They're yelling at each other, and if they don't catch fish, they come back to the dock and they're in a bad mood. And when I first started tournament fishing, like, I had this pride thing too, but I realized real soon that you lose friends over it, and you're going to lose tournament team members over it. We had a tournament at Oak Orchard one time, and we ran all the way to 4 Mile by the Niagara Bar just to fish. And we came in with 6 salmon in our cooler. We probably lost a dozen salmon, but we knew we had the fish on. It was one of those days, and we just kind of started laughing it off after the 5th or 6th salmon got off. And so being able to fish and not get in arguments with your teammates, and have a good time. The biggest thing is having a good time. And then on our boat, it's eating well. So
yeah, that's awesome.
We all get along. But that being said, we've fished with charters too. I was telling somebody today at work where we fished a Niagara Pro-Am with 2 different charters over the course of 2 days, and I think we took 3rd or 4th there. And again, when you're fishing with customers who've never fished with you, especially during a tournament, you just you can't get energetic and yelling at them, and you just kind of have a lay back. I like to just lay back, have a good time. And if you're going to get the fish in the box, the fish is going to come in the box. I mean, Doug, you charter.
Yep.
You've seen plenty of people come across the back of your boat, and the way they handle that rod, you're like, that fish is going to go. There's no way it's coming into the cooler. And they land that fish, and then you've got yourself on the rod or one of your teammates in a tournament, and you're doing everything right, and then that fish gets off. I mean, when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And but you just got to have a good time.
Right. Absolutely. So, Rick, let's talk a little bit about the diversity of Lake Ontario. I mean, Lake Ontario is it's a phenomenal place. One of the best places that I've ever fished. I fished Lake Erie, fortunate to fish Lake Erie, phenomenal fishery. Talk a little bit about Lake Ontario and just the diversity of what you guys have out there.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about Lake Ontario. So our typical season starts in, March, April, and we're into the brown trout on the shoreline of Lake Ontario. And you can take that right through May or June sometimes. But on the west end of Lake Ontario, we get into the salmon bite starting in May. And that's really what draws most people to Lake Ontario is the salmon bite. They're explosive, they're big. and they eat well. And then you have the lake trout populations, which is huge, and you can catch those pretty much anywhere in the lake most of the year. And then offshore, you've got your steelhead bite. So when you're out there trolling on any given day, you don't know what you're going to run into. And the other great thing is on those years where the salmon fishing is not as great as other years, you can fall back on the other species. Now, those are just the species that are offshore in Lake Ontario, but you head up to the Eastern Basin and you can get into some great muskie fishing. You've got probably some of the best smallmouth fishing in the world up there on the St. Lawrence River and Chameau Bay. And then the walleye fishing up there isn't a numbers game like it is on Lake Erie, but you can get into some real tanks up there on the Eastern Basin, fish pushing 12, 13, 14, 15 pounds. So we've got a really diverse fishery.
Yeah, you've caught some giant walleyes, and that's one thing I certainly near and dear to my heart is walleye fishing. And I've seen some of the fish that you've caught up there, and man, those are some phenomenal fish. What's a typical day up there from a numbers standpoint? Again, as you just mentioned, it's not what Lake Erie is in terms of numbers. Lake Erie is just a walleye factory. What's a typical day walleye fishing up there?
It's not it's not a numbers thing. So if I can hit 8 to 10 fish in a day, I feel like that's a great day up there. If you don't get at least one over 10 pounds every day, then you're doing something wrong. Most of the fish up there are in that 8 to 12 pound range, and that's what you're going to land just about every single time. So,
are you typically using crankbaits? With that fishery?
Yeah, it's all crankbait fishery, and a lot of times we're fishing really cold water. And I'm not a big walleye fisherman. I've never really fished with worm harnessers, spinners, any of that stuff. All I know is trolling with lures, and there's charts out there that help you determine what depth the lures are trolling at. Oh, my dog just wanted to join in.
Yeah, get him in here.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can hear mine too.
You're gonna make Andrea really happy. She's actually asking, is that Opie or is that Enzo? I'm like,
I want to apologize. Around Christmas time, I brought him and the baby into FishUSA. I'm sorry if some orders didn't get out that day. But the staff was playing with my dog and looking at my baby. So
that's one thing that will shut down FishUSA is a baby or a dog. If they either one come into the facility, it's over with.
Yeah. No, but getting back to it, we're trolling crankbaits. A lot of Baaraat LXDs up there. There's some great charts out there that show you where they dive to with snap weights and behind inline boards. And I enjoy it because after fishing salmon and trout all spring and summer, it's nice to get that diversity and break it up and troll for something different.
Sure, absolutely. So I just want to remind everyone, let's please get your comments in here for Rick. Make sure he asks a number of questions in regards to anything, walleye fishing, salmon fishing, brown trout fishing, anything you want to talk about. Will, do we have any that we can at least get started with here?
We've definitely got some comments we can get in.
I think the one that Rob Westcott asked is really important.
Yes, I totally agree.
Let me find that one.
No, not that one. But that is pretty impressive.
Is it this one?
Yes.
There it is.
So the wife made pork cutlets for dinner. They were delicious. Mashed potatoes. And then I watched my kid eat sweet potato fries. So that's what she made for dinner.
That's the most important question of the night.
What'd you have, Doug?
I have not eaten yet, actually. Let me get to it. Perfect.
I stopped at Chipotle.
Perfect.
You better not eat that until after this thing airs. I don't want to see your head disappear from that window.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's find some serious questions. So we'll start with Brad Porter. He wants to know, any muskie run yet?
I've never caught a muskie in my life.
Any Asian carp?
Nope.
Any bluegill?
Nope.
So no luck, Brad. Let's find some more. Funny one here from Alan.
No, so he's only allowed to use a 5-gallon bucket.
So what's the story on this then?
So see this guy in the screen here. His name's Alan Amon, and he's a walleye guy from Lake Erie. And anytime I get a charter and they're walleye guys from Lake Erie, I cringe. Okay, when it comes to fighting a salmon, it's a totally different battle. Okay, so these walleye charter captains come up and they book me for the day, and I have to watch these professional anglers reel in salmon, and he is horsing on this king. And I'm like, dude, you got to relax, calm down. You're putting too much pressure on him. And all of a sudden the line breaks, right? And I'm like, seriously, bro? So like 20 minutes later, this guy takes his hoodie off and he's got his charter shirt on, his charter t-shirt on. The name of this guy's charter business is Lost Tackle Charters. So yeah, so that, that happened. And then, so I started making fun of him after that. And he says he's going to destroy the head on my boat. And I told him he's not allowed down there. He's only going to get a 5-gallon bucket. Oh, I love chartering.
We got another one. Is it true you miss catching Lakers?
It's true that if I am in quarantine and I can't go fishing, I don't care what it is. If there is a tug on the end of the line, I will catch it. And after sitting home for a few weeks here, I didn't care if I caught a Laker or if I caught a walleye or a salmon or whatever it was. I just wanted to catch a fish.
Well, Rick, that's a good point. I'm actually glad Andy did put that up there, even though I think he was trying to get at you there. Talk about lake trout fishing, though, because it's can be a little bit of controversial up in Ontario. Of, do guys like to catch them or do they not? I've seen it. They've saved people's charters some days. So talk about that a little bit. What's your take on fishing for lake trout? I'm sure they've saved you once or twice. Talk about that a little bit.
They certainly do. And I've got people that come up here and they want to target them. If they want to fish for them, whatever, we can go fish for them. Where I fish and where I charter out of, we typically don't have to rely on those. But like you said, they've saved a ton of charters over the years, especially just lake wide in general. But we fish a tournament out of Oak Orchard where it's a multi-species tournament, and you're allowed to catch lake trout in this tournament. And you're going to get a lot of points catching lake trout just because of their weight on the trout side. And we make a game out of it. We put one guy in each corner of the boat and just make a competition out of it on the boat. It can be a lot of fun. And especially if you have kids, the tug on a lake trout to a kid, they don't care what it is. It doesn't matter. They're just happy to have something on. So, lake trout get their chops busted, but again, it just speaks to the diversity of our fishery and how great it is.
Absolutely.
We got one here from John. Some new fishing accessories for 2020. Anything new on the boat this year?
Oh, yeah. So we've got Cannon's new Optimum downriggers on the boat. We've also put on a fish hawk that'll interface with those. And I think that's it for accessories. I think we've got a new VHF, but other than that, that's not really a fishing accessory.
So how's Ben running the Cannon Optimum, the new downrigger? I'm sure there's a lot of people that are interested in that and want some feedback.
Yeah, no, I've got probably 7 or 8 days on them now, and I'm really liking them. I even had a guy on board this weekend who's used to fishing with me, and we've had the Digitrolls on our boat for 8 or 9 years, and then we've got the Optimums this year, and he noticed how much more smooth they were running up and down. I love stuff that networks. I do a lot with marine electronics in my day job as well, and I love the network stuff. So the fact that the Fish Hawk networks with these and soon to be my Humminbird electronics, if you look at a picture, I took a picture of the dash of my boat this past weekend, and I had my Moore sub troll, I had my Fish Hawk, which I just put on, my Smart Troll, I had my fish finder, my GPS. There was just so much data right there in front of me, and I'm just like a data geek, so I enjoy having all that. And the fact that everything networks just makes it even nicer.
Awesome.
But those Optimus have some really nice features. The one I'm most excited for is going to be the Remember the Last Depth. There's been countless times where you just hit auto up on the downrigger after you're fighting a fish, and then when you go to reset, you're like, where was it? And with me in the back of the boat, I'm constantly moving stuff up and down. I had no idea where it was. So it's nice that it remembers the last depth, and you can put it right back there.
Awesome.
We got Pete chiming in a little bit, giving it back to you from the other week when we had Pete on. So Pete got a question for you.
So yeah, I was messing with Pete a few weeks ago, but I don't think the story is appropriate for this on where we came up with the name. We had a name picked out for him. He ended up giving my wife gallstones through the pregnancy, and so we had a name picked out for him, and it just couldn't use it, so we ended up going with she liked the name Colton, and so we went with that. But yeah, it's a funny story, but I don't think it's appropriate for today.
Let's find some more questions. William wants to know best strategy to target mature kings in May headed up this weekend.
I think anybody who fishes salmon and they're looking for the biggest salmon in the bunch, big paddles with meat seem to be what has done well for us in the past at tournaments. Every tournament win or high tournament finish that I can remember, that has played a big role in that tournament. It's no secret that we run the stuff, but I really like the big paddles and I really like running meat. And when you're looking for big salmon, that's just a great combination. That being said, this past weekend when we were fishing, we were running Baaraat LXDs, Baaraat long shallows on our boards. We were running spoons on all our downriggers, and we had a hell of a day catching salmon on Saturday morning. So, be diverse when you're out there. Don't get stuck in one rut and just run this. A lot of guys say they can't run spoons with meat and they can't run flasher flies and plugs together. I mean, I've had triples that came in, where fish came in on a plug, a flasher fly, and a spoon. Just put your confidence stuff out there and go to work. But if you're looking for mature kings, I'm going to tell you to put on a big paddle and a piece of meat.
Nice. Ryan would like to know favorite stick for browns.
Definitely a short, shallow Baaraat. That is a go-to stick. If I'm fishing brown trout anywhere from 7 to 15 foot of water, it's going to be a short, shallow. If I have to get in on that beach because the water's clearing up, the S3 really gets in there, I can control that, and it won't go deeper than, say, 3 foot. But that profile bait seems to be the best. And I got to be honest with you, I've fished a lot of baits, a lot of stick baits. The Baaraats don't break. The hooks are great. I had a competitor's brand out there in one weekend and 3 fish, and I had the wire hanging out the back of it. And these are brown trout. I'm not even talking about what a salmon would do to it. And guys always they ask me the quality of these Baaraats, and we're catching salmon on these short shallows, and they're not breaking the baits. They're not bending the hooks. If you're bending the hooks on these things, you're taking the hooks out rough with a pair of pliers. They're just a quality bait. Everything is made in the USA, which is great, even right down to the components that go into it. Everything is 100% USA made. And the variety of colors they offer is endless. And if you want something painted that they don't offer, they'll paint it up for you. So that's a great thing. And they're always looking for new colors to come to market with. So if you got an idea, they're open to it. They'll paint it for you.
Rick, do you think the it's really the profile, really what sets those apart overall from the fish? The colors for sure, but the profile itself.
If you look at the profile, it kind of has that profile of a goby. It's got that big head on it. So I think that plays a role for sure. But I just think it's the availability of the colors, and I think the action's great. And like I said, it doesn't break. I mean, you can catch hundreds of fish on them. So
awesome.
We got a fun one here from Scott Butcher. He wants to know, what's your one that got away fish?
So this is the one that got away that could have cost us our first tournament win ever. So it was back in 2007 at Oak Orchard, and we had run down to Alcott to catch our fish. And why does it say my computer is not charging here? There we go. So we run down there, and the salmon bite's insane. And this is day one of the tournament, Orleans County Pro-Am. And we just put 10 salmon in the boat. And at this point in time, we were fishing out of a 25-foot bayliner. The cooler sat on the swim platform. And if you've seen pictures of my tournament team, imagine those guys in a 25-foot bayliner. So we just threw in fish number 10 in the cooler, and I break out my turkey sub, which I just been waiting to get into. And I've got 1 foot set up on the gunnel, just standing there, happy that it's early in the morning, and fish number 10 just went in the box. And I take a bite of this turkey sub, and I see the cooler door flop open, the fish flops in the water, and is laying there. And now I have to make the decision. Do I take my second bite of this sub, or do I jump in after it? And I was like, the water's too cold. So we call tournament control, and we say, hey, this is what happened. They're like, well, you can only bring 11 fish in today. So we bring our 11 fish in out of our 12 fish box, and we're sitting in second place behind Pete Alex day one. So we went out the second day, and we had to get our 12 fish. We got our 12 fish. We ended up winning that tournament, which was the first tournament we fished on the pro side. And it was our first win in a pro tournament. But it was the one that got away that could have cost us big. But it was just a funny moment.
That's an interesting twist on that question. Usually, you hear it a little differently.
Oh, that fish. Yeah, I'll never forget that fish. And it was a good one, too. It was 17, 18-pound fish.
Speaking of Pete Alex, we've got another question from him. What's your favorite DW mag spoon?
It's going to be the one I came up with years and years ago. A buddy of mine was painting spoons, and I had this stinger that was really good. It's called a Penguin. And I said, I don't know why they put an orange dot on this. I said, green's the color up here. I said, can you paint this for me? And so he painted it for me, and it just started taking fish that weekend. So we were looking at it, and the original spoon was called the Penguin. So we're looking at this one with a green dot, and we're like, well, this is going to be a seasick waddler. And so that spoon took off back when Northern King was in business. But when they went out of business, Shane painted a bunch of them up for me on Dreamweaver blanks. And you can bet that lure goes down first thing in the morning every day, whether it's the regular size or it's the mag. And in the summertime when we're running cheaters, I'll run both on the same line as a pin cheater. And that's probably my favorite Dreamweaver mag spoon.
Nice.
If you don't have one, you got to get one.
Ron's got a question. What's your early season setup? Spoons and stick baits?
Early season for Browns is going to be mostly stick baits, some spoons on our Chinook divers, which has really been a heck of a setup here over the last 3 or 4 years. That's really the only place we're going to run spoons early in the spring. But like this past weekend when we were out salmon fishing, we ran a mix of both. We had our stick baits out on the boards. We had LXDs on 15-pound mono rods, and then we had long shorts on our 2-color stealth core rods, and then spoons on all the riggers and divers. So really, you can fish them both together. It's not going to hurt anything.
Rick, talk a little bit about Chinook divers. I know they're not as widely known across the Great Lakes as some, Lure Jensen or the deeper diver. Seem to be gaining popularity. I know you run them a lot.
We run them a lot in the springtime. If we're fishing and we let's say less than 40 foot of water, we can really utilize that diver. And I know guys are running them a lot deeper than that. Maybe we just don't have the confidence in them yet. We haven't tried them yet. But on that early spring bite, if you're trolling browns and you don't have a pair of divers out, a pair of those Chinook divers out, you're really missing out on the bite, especially when the water's dirty. I fished with guys that brought their own divers and whatever they are, and that Chinook diver just seems to outfish it. And when guys, typically when you're spring brown trout fishing, you're thinking stealthy, you got your lures out to the side, they're further back, you're thinking these fish are really spooky, but that diver out 10 foot sometimes will just save the day. I think there's a video I put up on YouTube where that diver went off multiple times while I was on the phone talking to somebody, and Yeah, it's an explosive bite because it's right there. And usually the fish is up out of the water right when he hits it. So it's a nice technique.
Nice. Just taking a look in here for more comments. We've got a ton of questions coming in for you. So let me find the next one here. What's your go-to salmon rig? Flies, meat, spoons?
If I'm just doing numbers, I like to put spoons down because it's easy, it's clean. I got to be honest with you, I don't like touching those strips of meat and getting that stank hand. Okay. Usually one of my other guys is I have a teammate that he usually rigs all that stuff because I don't want to touch it. But so I like spoons for that. But flies and meat seem to catch quality. So if I'm out there in a tournament situation, we probably have more flies and meat in the water than anything else, just because of the reputation of catching bigger fish. And on Lake Ontario, anything with white glow, green seems to be a good color combination.
Dan wants to know, which Baaraat lures do you use for walleye in cold water?
LXDs are what we typically use up where I fish. And where I'm fishing walleye on the eastern basin of Lake Ontario. And believe me, I'm not a great walleye fisherman. I just do a little bit of it in the fall. But they're more natural colors. The gaudy colors that work in the western basin of Lake Erie seem not to catch the walleye up there. So it's more of the natural colors up there, but definitely the LXD size.
Earl wants to know, any word on when charters are starting in New York?
God, I hope soon, because I miss making fun of and picking on my customers. I look forward to it all week long, and I'm enjoying going out there and spending time with my brother and a buddy. Or even last week, I was out by myself. I don't really get to catch a salmon very often because I'm usually handing the rod off, but I hope they start soon because I really enjoy. I've got some great clients that I see every year, and miss taking them out.
What is your favorite salmon spoon, spring, summer, and fall?
I would say a Dreamweaver mag is probably my favorite because I just like that bigger profile. But the color pattern, again, it seems like in the springtime, the salmon will hit the gaudier colors, your mixed veggie type stuff, hog wild. But the seasick waddler is probably, again, my hands down favorite spoon color to run, no matter what time of year it is. Catch fall stagers, catch spring salmon. We had them going this weekend on a Dreamweaver regular size seasick waddler off of a rigger. So pretty much all the Dreamweavers spoon sizes are legit, and they've got some great colors.
Rob would like to know if it's true that you were recently voted in as the vice president of the Lake Ontario Charterboat Association.
That is true. And if you aren't a member of it, you should join it. We're trying to use this organization to rally the charter boat captains along Lake Ontario. We really don't have that organization now. There were some smaller organizations up and down the lake, and we want to kind of get one voice when there comes decisions for the fishery. I know there's recently been some stocking cuts and regulation changes, and we really don't have that voice there. So what we're trying to do there is grow that, and we're open to more than just charter boat captains too. We want to have something that we can give back with, and teach anglers how to catch more fish and whatnot. We do a flea market every spring with this organization, and it's just a good organization. We meet every month in Irondequoit, the Irondequoit Fishing Game Club, at 7:00 first Tuesday every month. Now we've had to cancel a few meetings because of the virus, but hopefully we'll get back up and running sooner than later. But it's a good organization, and if you're a charter boat operator, give us a holler, join up.
As Jamie would like to know what your favorite Midday Big King presentation is.
I would say probably a big paddle with a piece of meat on it, and I like to fish it deep. That's really no secret on the tournament trail. Um, I've kind of set the boat up so that fishing deep is easy and efficient on our boat. You know, there was one tournament in Toronto that I learned really quickly that you shouldn't look at the top 100 foot on your depth finder. You should look at the whole water column. But I was fishing over the top of fish that were biting down 200 feet, and I wasn't even looking at them on the fish finder. So when it comes to fishing, my favorite Midday Big King program, it's going to be a big paddle down deeper than 150 foot, trying to trick those lazy ones sitting down there in the biting.
Here's another comment from Jonathan. Leader lengths for dipsies, how far behind the downrigger and ball for baits?
I'm about a 6 foot tall guy, and I'll usually take 2 complete arms like spans. And that's what I'll run my divers at. There's really no scientific way to measure that out. I just kind of do a couple of arm pulls, and that what goes behind the dipsy. As far as behind the downrigger, that varies. I typically won't run it tighter than 15 or 20 foot. But I have no problem going back 50 or 60 foot either if I'm trying to trigger a spooky fish that has seen a lot of downrigger balls going through the water.
Sean wants to know, you fish daily. What do you think about the moon phases? Does it affect the bite or time of day they turn on?
I wish I fished daily, but I just don't get the opportunity to. So, believe it or not, I really only fish Saturdays and Sundays. And if there's a tournament around, I might fish Thursday, but definitely on a Friday. So I'm only fishing 2 or 3 days a week, to be honest with you. Moon phases. I've got a real good buddy who believes in it hard. I've tried to pay attention to it because it interests me, and I've seen fish activity on the sonar pick up during those times. I can't say that the bite's always gotten better, but if you watch your fish finder, you'll notice the activity of those fish below you picking up. So there's been some afternoon charters that I've gone on that was really slow when we got out of the gate. And, I just open up the app and take a look at when the major or minor bite's going to be. And I don't get too worried if I see it coming up later on in the trip. And generally they start turning on during that time. Now, is it gospel? No, but it's just one of those things I pay attention to. I think it has something to do with it, but I don't know if we could ever prove that.
Todd would like to know, does it matter if it's a gold, black, or silver back on the spoon?
I'm not a big gold guy. I run mostly silver on the back of my spoons. Now, I have some friends that love the gold back stuff, and it catches fish, but I've never been a big gold guy. I put more gold down when I'm fishing brown trout in the summertime to imitate those gobies and whatnot than anything else. But I feel like it's one of those things that's a confidence thing. If you have more confidence with the gold backs, then go with it.
Do salmon get confused when you run too many meat rigs?
I don't think so. I mean, I've had tournaments where we had 7 or 8 of them in the water, and everything was firing. So I'm going to say no. But, I guess there could be times when if you have a lot of boat traffic, it might not confuse them, but it might turn them off. It might make them negative. I don't think it'll confuse them, though. It'd be like him walking into the refrigerator and saying, look at all this food. I'm too confused to eat it. The guy's going to pick something on there.
Ryan wants to know, do you use scent?
I don't. Again, going back to the cut bait thing, I don't like my hands smelling because I like to eat when I'm on the boat. And so I do not use scent. I'm not saying it doesn't work because I know some very successful guys that run scent, but I do not use it.
We have one here from Mark. What's your favorite spot to fish on the North Shore of Lake Ontario, Toronto, or Buffalo, or
Bluffers.
area?
So it's funny. We started fishing over there probably 8 years ago. And, when we first started fishing over there, we would run all over the place. And my boat is not a fishing on fuel by any means. We'd run to Credit, we'd run to Whitby and fish all the water in between. But my team's probably going to hate me for this, but no matter what tournament it was over there on that North Shore, there was always somebody getting a check off of the drop off the Toronto Islands. So whether it was the winning check or just a check in general, we've pretty much narrowed it down to fishing between the front door at Bluffers and the Toronto Islands. And there's really no need to go much further because there's generally enough fish there to get you in the money.
Now, when you are running meat in large paddles, how high and on what setup do you put them on?
So we've got special rods that we run those on. They're a custom blank that a good friend of mine built. His name's Mike Rumming. He's a Canadian. He's built a lot of rods for guys on Lake Ontario. And this rod is a shorter rod and it's a little bit stiffer rod because when we are fishing meat, especially during the high sun time and we're fishing down deep, you kind of need to drive that hook home because with the monofilament, you've got a ton of stretch in the line. So the custom setups he's got us, they're like a medium heavy action rod. I believe they're like 7 foot. So that's what we'll run those on. But I know some good friends of mine run Shimano Taloras, I believe. They've got a medium heavy action rod, which is really good. And I'm not a Shimano guy, but I'm just letting you know what rods that I know of out there work well for large paddles, and they've got a medium heavy action rod, I believe, that my friends run. That's really nice too. But those are the rods though that I run.
Got an important one from Jay here. Best meatball sub in Rochester.
I don't know if I could pick one. Wow. DeBella's got good subs in Rochester. If you ever come through Rochester and you don't get a DeBella sub, you're missing out. But I usually don't pass up too many meatballs.
I got to come up and visit you one of these days soon once this is all over and get a garbage plate.
Oh, I was having the other day. You guys don't know what a garbage plate is. So you get choices and you got to pick 2 of them. You can have French fries, home fries, mac salad, beans. So they put 2 of those on a plate, kind of like half the plate is one, half the plate's the other. And then they throw the meat on top of it with a meat hot sauce, mustard, and onions. And it is awesome. We used to go there after we got out of the bars and we would eat that at 3 o'clock in the morning and then go home. That's a great meal.
So next question, back on topic. What do you do in the spring if you can't find colored water and the browns seem to disappear?
We've been noticing that just back off the beach a little bit, get out in that 15 to 20 foot range, get those baits, a little bit deeper diving plug, or maybe just run a longer leader to get those baits to dive a little bit deeper. And we've noticed that when it does clear, if you get off the beach, those fish out there in that deeper water aren't as spooked. Most of the time though, if you can get those S3s up into 3 or 4 or 5 foot of water, which is, you got to be careful where you're going because there's some places that are really treacherous with your boat. But when the water's clear, those browns will tuck up there right next to shore because there's generally a little bit of color due to the waves crashing on shore. But either get real tight to shore or back off and get a little water underneath you, and you can generally find some active fish out there. And honestly, you might even run into a salmon or 2.
What kind of length do you use on your meat rigs?
So that varies. I've got some that have a 3 foot leader behind a big 11-inch paddle, and we've got some that stretch out as far as 8 foot behind an 11-inch paddle. So, you build these confidence rigs as you are out there and you're fishing over the years, and you put down, your confidence rigs, and if they don't go, you put down your second string, and you'll find what the fish want that day. But to tell you that there's one leader length, I'd be misleading you, and a lot of it has to do with the speed you're trolling. Some guys troll faster than others. I was blown away that because I have my moor that I've fished for years, and now that I have this new fish hawk, I was blown away at how fast I was trolling on the fish hawk when I compared it to my moor this weekend. On my moor, I would troll at 2 miles an hour at my down probe. My fish hawk was reading 3.0 all weekend long, so they were about a mile apart. And I don't really care which one's right. It's just you want to find that constant with your speed and temp probe. And I was amazed at how fast I was trolling, because I know a lot of guys will run the fish hawk and they'll run it in that 2.5 to 2.7 range, but on my boat, that probe is running at 3 miles an hour. So that's that. When you talk leader length, it really depends on the speed of your boat, or the speed you're trolling, I should say.
Craig would like to know, do you think boat and motor noise makes a difference?
Going back to that spring brown trout bite with the Chinook divers, I mean, my exhaust on my boat is right off the side of the boat, and I've got a Chinook diver sitting there, and it gets rocked constantly. Even behind a 4-foot Amish outfitter's bag, they're getting rocked by brown trout. My boat is not quiet by any means. And even on my Lund, I'll run that Chinook diver off the back corner next to my kicker when it's running, and fish will bite it. So, if there's a lot of traffic, I think the boat motor noise kind of plays a role. But when there's not a lot of traffic out there, I don't think they really know what it is.
Tom wants to know, how important is ion control on the downriggers?
That's something I really don't mess with. So we ran braid on our downriggers for many, many years, and it's one of the things that we do to help us fish deeper more efficiently. So as far as I'm concerned, I can't really even mess with ion control because I don't have cable going down into the water.
What leader length do you prefer with lead core lines?
So when I spool up a lead core line, I generally will reel that lead core knot with my leader to where my level wind is, and then I'll go about a half a pass with the level wind, and I'll call it good. Not really the one that'll pull out a ruler and measure that stuff. Is that's just kind of my rule of thumb when I'm putting leaders on what I call junk lines, whether it's lead core or copper.
What's the longest copper you run?
We've got a 725 footer on the boat. When I'm fishing clients, though, I try not to go above a 300 copper. We're fortunate enough on Lake Ontario, on the west end of Lake Ontario, that our thermocline doesn't really get down there into those deeper depths. We can generally get away with a 300 copper. Come August, early September, we might have to go to the 400 or 500 foot copper, but nobody enjoys reeling fish in on that. And if I didn't charter or fish tournaments, I probably wouldn't own anything over a 300 foot copper. But that being said, the 700 foot copper has caught a ton of fish during tournaments for us. It's a stud rod, but you got to motivate yourself to put it out, because you know that someone's gonna have to reel that back in at some point.
So how many times a day do you change that thing?
You don't. You put your A game out there. And if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. I mean, you're not changing anything. So when we first started copper fishing, we had these Penn 345 reels. And we made this adapter that went into a DeWalt drill that would reel it in for us. And that was awesome. But it just beat the reel up. It scratched it up. And so I can't bring myself to do it with these newer reels that we have. But if we could get somebody to come up with an adapter to reel in long coppers just to change lures, that would be a lifesaver. Pete said
All right.
Yeah, he's I can win.
Let me find some more questions.
So we thought it was only a 700, and then we measured it in the field one day, and we were like, wow, we're reeling in a little extra.
That's a lot of line.
At what depth do you start running large paddles?
It's funny. You'd think that you'd want to be out and have some water underneath you, and then you go and fish a fall King of the Lake tournament, and guys are running 11-inch paddles and 15 foot of water, and you're like, "What are you doing?" But it catches fish. As long as I can put a large paddle down there, I will. We've fished them on 5 and 10 color lead cores in the skinny water, just because I know I can get it out there and get it away from the boat and fish a big paddle. But generally, I would say 40 foot or deeper, you'll have enough water underneath you where you can get one of those big paddles down there and fish it effectively.
So while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, we'll answer a couple fun ones. So Alan wants to know, what beer is best to bring on the boat and the quantity?
See, I'm not a beer drinker. I don't drink alcohol, period, because I just don't like the way it tastes. Sometimes these tournament guys can get me to have a drink with them on the dock, and that's fine, but I'm not a big beer drinker. I don't see how you guys can drink that stuff. It doesn't even taste good.
Oh, I love it. The darker, the better.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. I'd want Guinness out on the boat.
I mean, the guy asking this question shouldn't drink any beer at all because he's losing tackle on my boat as it is, sober.
Going through here looking for some more comments. Best thing to run on copper?
The shorter coppers, I really enjoy running spoons on them, especially your 150s, 200s, and 300s. Spoons are really productive, and reeling it back in to change it isn't so bad. You know, everybody wants to go with these high-speed reels now for the coppers, but when you put a big paddle on that heavy copper and you try to reel it with that high-speed reel, you lose your torque and your power. So I love reeling in spoons on copper, but you put an 11-inch paddle on a 300 copper and it's miserable. But when we're running the 400 and 500 coppers, definitely like running paddles on them. You're targeting salmon and you're targeting salmon deep. And again, when you're doing that, I prefer to run flashes with flies or meat on them.
So I'm almost afraid to put this one up because it seems like it could have a story to it. Can you explain exactly what arts and crafts time is on the Yankee Troller?
Oh, God. So we've got a guy who fishes with us on our Canadian tournaments. I won't mention his name. But I mentioned earlier how my brother usually comes out with these funky rigs and he wants to try them. And they look, I probably wouldn't put it down, but they don't look horrible. And they catch fish. And then there's this guy on my team. And at first we limited him to one rod on the boat during tournament day. Now he's lost it. He doesn't have any rods that he can put any lures on, but he would pull this rig out of like a gym bag. Like he didn't even have a tackle bag. He had a gym bag. And it would look like him and his daughter sat down on arts and crafts night and made this meat rig. There'd be one squid, one fly, there'd be a spinner, and it would just look weird. So we started making fun of him, telling him that he was doing arts and crafts with his daughter, making his fishing lures. So that's where that came from.
Off of that question, Carl wants to know, Yankee Troller is a great name. How did you come up with it?
So my father, his boat name was Yankee Troller. We grew up fishing on that boat. Like I said, we got out here when we were 5-6 years old. We started fishing Lake Ontario. So in 2009, he had a accident where he fell off the roof of his house, landed on his head in the driveway, had a severe brain injury. So him and I were chartering. He would drive the boat and I would rig the rods when I first started chartering. And so that accident happened, and my brother and me started chartering after that. We ran that boat for one more season and then sold it and bought the current boat. And we just figured, we're just going to keep the name rolling. Everybody knew us by Yankee Troller, and it was the name of my dad's boat. So we just stuck with it. And so that's where the name Yankee Troller came from.
Nice.
He was a big Yankees fan. I don't really get into sports, but he was a diehard Yankees fan. And so that's why he named his boat that.
Pete wants to know, what leg core do you prefer and why?
So Pete turned me on to Stealth Core many years ago, and I just liked the concept of it. I had run some different lead core companies over the years and had some success with it, and others that, had cost me some fish. And then I found a company that I liked the product, but the colors were just so vibrant. And I'm like, this really defeating the purpose of being stealthy and getting away from the boat. And then Pete showed me this stuff many years ago. We spooled it up and we haven't looked back. I've had no failures on this stuff. I just respooled my 10 color rods that have had that same lead core on for probably 5 seasons or 4 or 5 seasons. And it's probably still would have been fine this year. But I just wanted to look at the fresh red and black colors on the new spool sitting in my garage. So we run strictly the FishUSA Stealth Core. We've had absolutely no failures with it, and it's good stuff. And I love the fact that it's the 2 colors that are going to disappear first in the water column.
What's your favorite flasher and fly rig?
Oh, I would say probably a Wonder Bread flasher with a glow blue hammer behind it. That's usually one that goes out in a diver every morning. Seems to be one that's caught a ton of fish for us in the past. We've got some nicknames for it on the boat, which probably aren't appropriate here, but that color combo since day one has been a great producer, and even to this day, you put it out there, you're probably going to catch fish on it.
Here's a fun tournament question. Who's the team or teams that you look up to that you love to beat at every tournament?
Wow. There's a lot of teams out there that, growing up, I looked at the Greg Garrigs and the Vince Pirleones and those guys that have been fishing these tournaments for years. When I first came on the scene, I wanted to beat everybody. And, there were some guys that I wanted to beat for different reasons. But I just enjoy going out there and competing against everybody. I don't care if it's the guy fishing his first tournament or the guy that's fishing his 250th tournament. Just that competition and putting yourself against those guys in the same water. I know a lot of guys are getting these tournament boats nowadays, and they can run all over Lake Ontario. My boat's probably one of the slowest boats in the tournament field, but I like to put that boat in the pack with everybody else and put our team's skills up against everybody else that's out there and see how the cards fall. There really isn't one particular or 2 particular teams that we look forward to beating every time. It's just getting out there competing against everybody in general. And we love tournament fishing, so we're kind of bummed right now. We're missing out on some great tournaments.
Well, Doug, Rich, do you have anything you want to talk about before we wrap up and take some final comments?
No, I just want to thank you guys for having me on. This was fun. We had some good conversation prior to this, and it's been fun looking at all of my buddies with other crazy questions. And I think we've taken some great questions here over the last 45 minutes or so. But it's been fun. I want to thank you.
Yeah, we've already done an hour. Time flies on this.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to ask, Doug? Or
no, Rick, it's been a pleasure, and we certainly appreciate you coming in and taking all these viewer questions, and certainly helpful for them, and they certainly appreciate it. So thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for what you do for the fishery as well. Certainly, you're very out there, very active for the community, a strong voice for Lake Ontario. So we appreciate everything that you're doing across the board.
All right, thanks, guys.
Before we wrap up, we're going to take a couple more questions, guys, so get them in real quick.
Why not?
Got to get them answered. This is an interesting one. When you use lead core versus copper?
So lead core I tend to use more with spoons, copper more with flashers and flies, just because of the weight and being able to hold those lures, those flasher flies down on the copper side of things. But that's really if there was one thing that kind of led me in one direction or the other, it would be that. But we have some very successful days running spoons on short coppers, and I've had some decent days running flashers and flies on 5 and 10 colors as well. So typically if I'm going to run spoons, I'm going to put it on lead core. If I need to get deeper or run a flasher fly, it's probably going to be on a copper rod.
Troy wants to know, do you run J plugs or ping out lures? If so, what time of year?
I love sliding a Lyman or a Dreamweaver cut plug into the spread as early as July. And I know there's some Canadians that have caught fish on Lymans, in that April, May timeframe as well. But come July, I'll start sliding a plug out there, especially on a copper line first thing in the morning. And we've had great success with that. So I love putting a plug out there because you don't get a chance to fish them a lot. And, with all the spoons and flashers and flies we have, they kind of get put on the sideline, but it's always cool catching a fish on a plug. And we lose very few fish on those Lymans and those cut plugs. They seem to hook up pretty good. So when you get a rip on one, you got a good chance of getting into the boat.
Nice. Well, it looks like we've answered all the questions. A lot of people chiming in the comments, thanking us, congratulating us on a good show. So, thank you, Rich. Thanks for having fun with us. Thanks for answering questions. But most of all, thank you to everyone that, tuned in and has commented and put questions in. We tried to answer as many as we could. A couple of questions in there we touched on a couple of times. So if you didn't see your question answered, go back, rewatch the video, and chances are we touched on it for another person. So until next Monday, thank you, everyone. Be sure to stop by FishUSA, check out our new apparel, and we'll catch you next week at 7 o'clock.
Thanks, guys.